Jovan Buha! Buha!
All right, no sound. Well, the technical difficulties continued into going live. Okay, well, as I was saying, can you guys hear me now? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Good? Okay. Uh, awesome. Well, this is why this is a bit of a test run. As I was saying, just got back from Lakers Media Day, and I have 5 takeaways to discuss on today's live stream. And that moving forward, I will be going live after press conferences and after games. It saves me some time on the back end with editing, versus editing or recording versus going live, and then it also allows me to interact with you guys and answer your questions and get your feedback. So awesome. Glad seeing you guys light up the chat. The audio is back. So let's get into Media Day takeaways. Number one for me was LeBron's tank, LeBron's energy, LeBron's mood, whatever you want to label it. But to me, one of the immediate things that stuck out was LeBron's attitude. And LeBron is one of those types of players who can often dictate the mood of his team and just the attitude and the perspective. And LeBron was in a great mood. This is now the fifth media day that I've covered with the Lakers, and this was by far the best mood I can remember LeBron being in. And that includes a media day coming off of a championship, albeit that was a much shortened off season. So maybe the Lakers at that time were a bit upset with how little time they had off. But to me, LeBron being having the mindset and some of the comments that he had, particularly about this off season and him feeling like he was advanced in multiple parts of his game because it was an Olympic year and because he was able to play deeper into the summer, which I feel like for some players we see it the opposite. Like I thought last year it really affected Austin Reeves and it got him off to a slow start at the beginning of last season. But with LeBron, he said if you go back and look at each off season that he played in the Olympics, that he had a really strong season the following season. And of course, with LeBron, every year has been a strong season, so it's hard to disagree, but it's also like he's just put out nothing but great years. So but even with all that said, like just his attitude, talking about the Olympics, talking about playing with Bronny, playing with the younger players in the Olympics, having like actually competing for something, and I thought by LeBron standards, like that was the closest he got to making a passive aggressive remark. Was just a couple of times kind of saying like actually playing for something was nice, and like and that to me, he will sometimes make those types of comments, and I kind of took that as like, well, yeah, the Lakers haven't played for anything in a few years now, really. Having not advanced, well, I mean, 2023 was made the conference finals, but outside of that, it's either been first round and out or not making the playoffs over the last few years. So I thought LeBron talking about that, and then also, of course, Bronny and just playing with his son, the surreal nature of that. He had joked about how like their interactions nowadays are basically Bronny comes down, he eats, he goes back up to his room and plays video games, and they'll see each other at the facility. They have differing accounts of what happened a couple weeks ago when LeBron scored on him out of a switch. But I thought LeBron Like you can like one of the things I've learned covering LeBron is you can really tell what mood he is in, and his mood can be infectious in both positively and negatively. And I thought this was an example of LeBron having a positive mood. So let's see. We'll get into some questions. Ethan Perez, what was the overall vibe from today? I thought the vibe was very positive, and of course, it's media day, so you're going to get into like the new school vibes, right? It's new school, first day of school, rather for us as the media day. We're seeing everybody that we haven't seen in a few months. We're catching up, and you're seeing that with Lakers staffers and Lakers players, and each player is assigned a different staff member that's taking them around to the different stations. So you got like ESPN Radio, Spectrum Sportsnet, ESPN on TV. You got the NBA, you got the Lakers, the in-game arena stuff. So you got all these stations that they're going to, in addition to talking to us in a press conference setting. So there is that like first day of school vibe always with the media day. But this group has been together. Like they're returning 13 of 15 players from last season. The only two new additions as of right now are Bronny James and Dalton Connect. So this group and some of these guys going, Rui, D'Lo, Vando, those guys have been together now for, in addition to obviously LeBron, AD, Austin, and Max, like over a year and a half now. So this group has played together, or most of this group has played together for parts of, 3 seasons now. And I think you can kind of tell that even just asking, I asked Cam about the continuity and what that could do in terms of getting out to a good start. And he was just like, we all really like each other and we're building off of what we had last year. So I think you got that vibe for sure. I don't want to spoil one of my takeaways, but I kind of will now. Like, there clearly was some shots at Darvin Ham, some subtle shots and some not so subtle shots, and it was more so praising JJ and the coaching staff. But by talking about structure and guys feeling like they already know their roles or like they've already made progress this offseason, there were some like backhanded and slight comments that I felt were kind of shots at Darvin Ham. So I will touch on that in a little bit. But overall, I thought the vibe was very positive, and even by media day standards, it was more positive than normal. But and there's a whole new medical team, new athletic trainer. I'm seeing some of the comments, and you guys are talking about D'Lo. Uh, Tony Yayo, Buha, can you hire Zach Lowe at Buha Enterprises? Need the low post to continue. Look, man, I haven't issued a public tweet because it just didn't feel right. It didn't, because sometimes some of that stuff, like I think for the most part, it's always like well wishes, but sometimes it can kind of go into like talking about yourself or self promotion or self indulgence, and like I try to refrain from that type of stuff. But look, Zach to me is the GOAT NBA writer slash reporter. Like I know from a news breaking standpoint, obviously it's been Woj and Shams, but since I got into the media in 2011, Zach has been my favorite reporter to read and my favorite reporter to listen to on podcasts. And like when he says something, I take it very seriously. And if he has an opinion that I disagree with, he's one of the few people where like I will check myself and kind of be like, what am I missing here, or what am I getting wrong with this? Rather than I just disagree or I think he's wrong. Like he's just one of those few people that I know puts in the work, is watching multiple games a day, is putting talking to however many people that he's talking to and on a daily basis, and it's just like you can tell that he's in the minutia with every single team, every single fan base. So Zach to me, I'm giving him his flowers right now. I doubt he's going to see this, but like I don't have the Buha Enterprises going yet. Still working on that, but Zach will have a big time job. Whenever he wants to. I'm sure he's having conversations with various companies right now, and wherever he wants to go, I'm sure he'll end up there. So it was very shocking, and I was very surprised. That was the last person I would suspect, especially after Woj just left. But that's the business. It was also a wake up call for me of just like literally no one is indispensable in this business. So that was pretty shocking. But definitely I think Zach will land on his feet and he'll be fine. Seeing some stuff about the sound. I've been having some StreamYard issues. I don't know what. Uh, okay, let's see. I appreciate you guys letting me know. I don't know what's going on. I will have to figure this out. Okay. Sound is fine. Okay. Well, I'm trying to. So I know I'd had sound issues on the last the episode with Pete, but okay. Let me know if you guys. Some people are saying AirPod mic. I'd switched it to okay. Uh, I'm gonna keep going just because I don't want to stop the stream, but I will try to figure this out. Uh, Samuel Almbert, do you play fantasy football? Yes, I have three teams, and I'm not doing well. It's I had Rasheed White, Rice in one league, uh, Travis Etienne, and okay, people are saying, yeah, I don't know what it's been like. It just hasn't been connecting to my mic. I apologize. Um, I mean, I'm seeing like I have a little voice knob here, and it's showing that it when I talk, it's picking it up. But okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm sorry, guys. I will try to figure this out by the next stream. But so takeaway number one for me again, LeBron, his energy, his attitude. Takeaway number two was the players love the new coaching staff, and that's where I just alluded to the Darvin Ham stuff. Where structure was the buzzword of the day. There's always like the one talking point, the one catchphrase or buzzword, and it was clearly structure. You heard multiple players talk about it. That's been a big talking point for JJ Redick is giving the team as much structure as possible. He's a very detail oriented coach. One of the things that players talked about was just JJ in their communication with him being a very clear and effective communicator. And that was something that going back to last season, a lot of players were frustrated with in terms of their role, in terms of the game day game plan changing. I heard sometimes it would change in the pregame meeting, and it would just be completely different than what they discussed at shoot around or the previous practice. So I think for players having that, like players are very routine based, and having a clear set. Like I thought it was a big deal that JJ Redick came out and said this is the starting lineup. Like there was no training camp battle, no uncertainty entering the season. It's like day one of training camp. The Lakers know they're starting five, and there's a couple bench guys out with Vando and with Christian Wood, but like it's going to be fitting in the pieces around those five guys and what makes the most sense. So I like that he just kind of put that to rest. But that was a big talking point for several players of comparing and contrasting last season to this season, which was also indirectly contrasting the previous coaching regime to this coaching regime. And again, some not so subtle shots at Darvin Ham, where you had D'Lo mention that previously there were times the Lakers were just winging it, and that now there's been a lot more structure with JJ and the offseason strategy and the workouts. But he wasn't the only one. Rui Hachimura, Max Christie, Cam Reddish, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Maxwell Lewis. Those were just a few of the guys who either complimented the coaching staff on their workouts or their strategy or their communication, and or took some not so subtle shots at the previous one. So I thought that was very telling. And this was something that I was on top of all of last season, going back to my report with Shams back in January when we both reported together that the team was beginning to lose trust in Darvin Ham in the locker room. And, a big part of that was the lack of communication with certain things, whether it be the starting lineup, the rotation, the game plan, lack of organization. So those things I think were confirmed throughout the rest of last season, obviously confirmed with the firing of Darvin Ham, but also been confirmed with the things that players were saying today. So I thought that was a just for someone who's in the weeds with all this stuff. And I've heard, everyone on the team for the most part speak at least, 10, 15 times last season at a minimum. And just seeing the way that certain guys were saying things, it was like they were trying to kind of dance around it, but they couldn't really hide their excitement for the current coaching staff and their feelings about the previous one. So I thought, and it wasn't even like the like look at the names I said. I mean, D'Lo and Rui are obviously two starters, but like Max Christie, Cam Reddish, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Maxwell Lewis, like it wasn't like LeBron and AD and Austin and like some of the bigger names on the team. For the most part, it was like some of the mid to low end guys in terms of rotation. So I thought that was interesting. Then so I think on the one hand, like the past is the past, right? So I think the Lakers obviously made the right decision to move on. But I think in terms of like winning the players over, which is a really big thing, especially entering a training camp as a new coaching staff, as a coach who's never coached before, I think JJ Redick has already done a great job, at least based on what the players have been saying. Which again, like there's always some element of like again, first day of camp or first day of school, and the players are going to be in a positive mindset, and like some of the stuff is cliches, and you hear the same stuff on media day, but to me this was a little bit different. This was stuff that was never said last season, what was never said the previous season. So for what that was worth, I thought it was telling that like just the reaction that players have had to JJ and how encouraged and excited they've been with him, contrasted to the mood in the perspective last season. I thought that was something that was telling. So let's see. Lazane, are you going to make vlogs this season as well, Buha? Let me know in the chat because I don't do everything for views, but I do try to give you guys the type of content that you enjoy. And up to this point, the stuff that you guys have responded the best to has been the reactions, obviously the podcast and live streams. So I stopped doing vlogs because they weren't getting as many views, getting as much traction, and it's a lot of work to record everything, to go back and edit it, then do the voiceover, and like I really enjoy doing vlogs. But I was thinking maybe like certain like in season tournament, if the Lakers go back to Vegas, maybe opening night, like maybe some of the Christmas, so some of the bigger games, doing some vlogs, and maybe not doing it like every game like I started doing last season. But let me know in the chat if you guys want to see vlogs, because I'm sure some of you guys have subscribed and not even seen my vlogs, because that was like back in February and March. So for the newer subscribers, I know some of you guys probably haven't seen it. But I see you, Lazane. I appreciate that. Uh, Mo Love, just go live so you can live and have a life. I try, but I'm gonna say, is this Davis? Which Davis, sort of yeah, yes, vlogs behind the scenes would be cool to see. Okay, so if you guys want to see vlogs, I'll show you, and might just do bigger games. I could do like first preseason game, first regular season game, Christmas Day, first road trip, like some of those kind of like moments during the season, and then not necessarily like in every game type thing. Question from Dark Galaxy: where is training camp taking place? So training camp is taking place in LA, in El Segundo, at the Lakers UCLA Health Training Facility. But interestingly, all 6 of the Lakers preseason games are on the road, which I find interesting. It's the first time, this is gonna be my 13th season covering the NBA, and I cannot remember a time that a team has had every game on the road, outside of like there was the lockout and then there was COVID, where it was shorter preseason. It was like 2 games, 3 games. So like in terms of like a normal preseason length of 4 more games, I can't remember covering a team that had all 6 games on the road. So the Lakers' first 2 preseason games are in Palm Springs. Their third preseason game is in Milwaukee. Their fourth preseason game is in Las Vegas. Their fifth preseason game is in Phoenix. Then they have a back-to-back and they go to San Francisco. So I can't remember a preseason back-to-back, and I can't remember a preseason having all 6 games on the road. Now, part of this is because the Lakers are renovating Crypto.com Arena. They're changing the locker room. They're changing the bowels of the arena, the tunnels and stuff. So there is good reason for why the Lakers aren't playing a game during the preseason, but it's just still, to me, I can't remember that ever happening. So let's see. We got a couple of super chats. Question from Telly. With Coloco named to the training camp roster, does that mean he's cleared? Uh, no, we have not gotten. So that'll be JJ will talk tomorrow for the first time since his media day, which was last week. So we will ask about Coloco. The last we had heard, Rob said he was not cleared by the NBA yet, and that was last Wednesday. So still waiting to get an update on that. Just because he's on the roster doesn't mean he's cleared. Just like obviously Vando's on the roster, Christian Wood's on the roster, they're still out. So just because you're on the roster doesn't mean that you are cleared to play. It's obviously, I think it's a worthy gamble from the Lakers, betting on him and just seeing what type of upside that is still untapped and that they can uncover with him. But to my knowledge, he's not been cleared yet. Though I think obviously with the Lakers signing him, there was an indication that he was going to be cleared at some point relatively soon. So I would not be surprised if he's cleared during training camp or the preseason, or maybe he is cleared and we just haven't heard yet. But as of now, my understanding is he has not been cleared yet. Next one from Norma Maldonado. Great having Buha back. Looking forward to an exciting season. Hey guys, please hit the like button. Thank you, Norma. Please do hit the like button for those watching. And then next one from Glenn Kamita. Who will have the bigger role on this team, Gabe Vincent or Max Christie? This is a really interesting question. I would lean maybe early on more toward Gabe, but I think if we're talking about like April, May, where this team is, I'm actually going to go Max. And maybe I might even, it could be Max from the beginning just because Vando's out and the Lakers don't have a traditional wing stopper, and maybe Max can take on that role. It's really going to have to be between him and Cam Reddish. Like Gabe can obviously defend either backcourt spot, but in terms of like threes, or even some big twos, I think you want to put a Max or a Cam on that type of guy when it's not the starters. So for me, I think it's probably Max ultimately. But I think to start the season, like Gabe, I think people have been a little too low on Gabe and a little too soured by the experience last season because, like, I get it. He played in 11 games and he was a disappointment and it was like a wasted year from a contract perspective. But this was still a guy who was a starting guard on a team that made the NBA Finals. And I don't think that should be overlooked. And of course, it remains to be seen if he can get back to being that player. But I think that player's still in there somewhere. He's still in his late 20s. He's not like he's not in his early to mid 30s and like over the hill. So I would just say that with Gabe, like I think people have soured on him a little bit too much. But that if I had to guess though, I think Max and just his defense and his shooting, he's been a better shooter than Gabe the last couple of years. And I think his wing defense is something that the Lakers really, really need in addition to point of attack defense. But I would lean a little bit toward Max. But let's get into takeaway number three, which for me was the injury updates. So we got a chance to finally speak with Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood, and some positive news and some negative news. So I'll start with the bad first. With Jared Vanderbilt, he was asked, just point blank, do you think you'll be available for opening night? Which was a timeline that Rob Pelinka had floated out there, going back to last week when asked about Vando and his recovery, and said things were progressing to plan, which has been kind of the Lakers, public phrasing for players coming back from injury. But as we know, over the last few years, they've had several guys who have not progressed the plan and have tended to be out, longer than initially expected. So with that, that was kind of the first thing, or just the first data point of like, okay, Vando is going to be out through training camp and most likely the full preseason. But in asking Vando about that, he prefaced everything with saying he was feeling good, progressing good. But then when asked about that specific date and if he would be available, he said, I'm not quite sure. And then said that, the team has a plan and he's just going along with that plan and trying to progress through that. So I would say that's a little discouraging. And as I had said, when Rob, made those comments and said that a big thing would just be setbacks, and like Vando had some setbacks last season. So I think that for me, it's looking like he's probably not going to be available by opening night. Now, whether that's just him missing a couple of games and he's back that first week or after a week, or it's a little bit longer, like that remains to be seen. And I'm still trying to dig on that. But based on Rob's comments last week and Vando's comments today, I don't think it's looking promising in terms of Vando being ready for opening night. Now that could change, and we'll see in terms of his ramp up and you know that whatever that road to recovery is. Maybe that changes here in the next like week or two. But as of right now, based on what they both have been saying, you know, just kind of reading between the lines there, it does not sound very positive in terms of him being available for opening night. Now, Christian Wood seems like he could be progressing a little bit quicker. So what Christian said was that he's got about 2 weeks left until he starts to ramp up, and then he thinks he needs about 2 weeks to get back into game shape. So for him, like 4 weeks would be end of October, early November, and that would be a little bit ahead of schedule compared to because I want to say Rob last week said 6 weeks from that point, so that would be about a week early because that would end up being 5 weeks from that point. So to me, like the Christian news was positive, the Vando news was a little bit negative. Obviously, the Lakers need Jared Vanderbilt more than they need Christian Wood, I would say, just based on the makeup of the roster. But I think they're going to need both guys at some point. And those are both top 11 guys in the rotation. So on the Christian front, I think that was a positive development. But with Vando, remains to be seen how he progresses, when he will be back, and whatnot. So next one from Devis Carsini. I probably butchered that. I apologize. What did you think about D'Lo during media day? So that's going to be my takeaway number 4, which to me, D'Lo displayed maturity and self-awareness during media day. And so he apologized for, quote, his lack of professionalism at times and his, quote, lack of a team first perception at times. So I have the full quote here, and I'll read it to you, just because I thought this was this was incredible to me. Like to hear this come from D'Lo after some of the quotes he's had, you know, on social media or in podcasts, even going back to last season, the season before. Like this was a departure from some of the lack of self-awareness I think he's had at times. So he said, I think for me, honestly, I really want to apologize in the sense of showing a lack of professionalism at times, showing a lack of team first perception at times. So for me, just keeping that maturity and that professionalism throughout the year, no matter the ups and downs, holding myself more accountable on the defensive end. Obviously, I know I'm capable, but when you get subbed out of the game for offense, defensive possessions, that shows where your trust is with your coach and your ability. So for me, just trying to gain that trust with coach defensively and consistently, I'm going to show up every day, practice, game, preseason, whatever, knowing that coach has that trust in me as well. I think it will continue. I think it will just continue into a successful season. So I've been critical of D'Lo at times, and that's largely been based on the 2 Denver series and to a lesser extent some of the inconsistency in the Golden State and Memphis games. But another part of it was at times what I felt was a lack of maturity and self-awareness from him with some of the comments. And it felt like anytime he played poorly, he would get very defensive or he would decline to speak to the media. And I think that was a similar issue to Russell Westbrook, where anytime Russ had a bad game and we would ask, he would either decline to speak to us or we would ask him about it. And he would next question us or give us a 1 or 2 word answer and just completely absolve himself from any criticism, any blame for anything. And that just did not help matters. So I think for D'Lo, he hasn't done it quite to the extent of Russ, but there's certainly been some elements of just him not really owning up, especially in the Denver series, sort of his shortcomings. And I thought that him talking about lacking professionalism at times and having this sort of me first or not a team first perception, like that is his perception around the league, and that is partly why he didn't have a free agent market. So for him to acknowledge that, for him to own that, and for him to say that's something he's working on, I think that shows real growth. And I think D'Lo deserves acknowledgement. He deserves kudos for that growth and perspective. Also mentioned wanting to be better on the defensive end. Now, he did say something similar last year in terms of the defense. He compared himself to Derek White and wanting to be LA's Derek White. that did not quite materialize. It only lasted a few preseason games before he kind of went back to being the guy he's always been. But at least from, and who knows, this could all be lip service. This could all be just, again, first day of school, you're saying the right stuff, and then you go on a 3-game losing streak, you get benched in a game, and all of a sudden you're back to being upset or deflecting. But for now, I think we should take D'Lo at face value of what he said. And to me, I thought this was very encouraging and promising. And again, this was all the things I think he has needed to say in the past, and better late than never. And if the Lakers are going to ride with him and potentially keep him past the trade deadline, then this is the version of D'Lo I think you need to see, and then this is the version of D'Lo that needs to show up. So again, I give D'Lo a lot of props for the way that he handled questions about potentially being traded, and he's had to deal with a lot since being back in LA. And I haven't always been easy on him, but I also want to be fair, right? And I think that his answers today were very encouraging and promising, and I think he deserves props for that. So. And look, and for what it's worth, to go back to takeaway number 2, talking about Darvin and JJ, like D'Lo was leading the train on the Darvin subs. He had interviews with Spectrum and a couple other things where he was taking some shots. So yeah. Dark Galaxy, how do you think LeBron and AD are going to be managed for the preseason? It's a good question. I haven't really dug into it too much. Like, that's probably something I'll ask, or one of the questions I'll ask at some point this week with JJ. But I would guess, like, I would be surprised if they play in the back-to-back to end the preseason. Like, maybe they just play in the first quarter. But again, a preseason back-to-back is just that's mind-boggling. That's honestly arguably worse than having 6 road preseason games. But then you look at the Lakers' first 3 games are at home, then they go on a 5-game road trip. So you add that together, and 11 of the Lakers' first 14 games, technically, including preseason, are on the road. So it's not exactly an easy start to the season. But yeah, Ethan Perez, Jovan, I'm a broke college student. Should I get a bootleg or real Lakers jersey? Then which player should I get, considering I want the player to be here a long time? Well, first off, thank you for watching and supporting. Honestly, I would say get the bootleg because I think jerseys are a bit overpriced. I think like the cheapest ones now start at, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they start at like 120 now or something crazy. And then like if you want the authentic one, it's like 220, 250. I think that's insane for a jersey. Like, obviously it depends on how much you're going to wear it. If you're going to be wearing it like once a week or once every other week, then maybe the cost per wear is worth it. But or if you're wearing it for every game at home that you're watching, like, then sure, if it's going to be like your special jersey, your special thing, go for it. But honestly, like, if you can get, there's a lot of good bootleg ones that it really takes, like, you got to catch a minor detail to know it's a bootleg versus a real one. So if you can get a quality bootleg one for like $80 or less, $50 or less, I think that's probably the move. And if I had to pick a player, I would just say AD. I think that's the guy. Like, with this group, I don't think there's any assurances that any of these guys are here beyond like 2 or 3 years. But if I had to pick a player, I mean, LeBron could retire in another year or two. Any of the other guys could theoretically be traded for the right player. And then you have AD, who I think is going to be a Laker for at least a few more years. You could also get Bronny if you're a LeBron or Bronny fan. But I would say, once LeBron retires, like, who knows what happens with Bronny in terms of whether he stays with the Lakers or whether he goes somewhere else. There's always the chance LeBron ends up owning the Vegas team eventually. And like, so who knows? Like, I would say that the one Laker I'd be the most confident in being a Laker in like 3 years would probably be Anthony Davis. So I would say get a bootleg AD jersey. But let us know in the comments. What do you guys think in terms of bootleg versus, people are saying connect? That's another good one. It all depends on like who. I mean, I would say, like, do you have a favorite player? Because if you just have a favorite player, like, go get that guy. One thing I would say with connect is, like, I do think if the Lakers make a big trade, there's always a chance he's potentially involved, just because he's going to have value as a attractive player on a rookie contract. But So personally, I would still rank AD ahead of him in terms of like most likely to be a Laker in like 3 years, but Connect is a really good answer. And then I'll do my final takeaway, and then I'll keep answering some questions, and I'll get out of here. My question or takeaway number five was there wasn't much to glean tactically, and what I mean by that was my goal entering media day was to follow up on some of the basketball questions that JJ had been talking about. So some of the strategic adjustments. So, for example, he's talked about wanting to run more of the offense through Anthony Davis. He's talked about wanting LeBron to play off the ball more and shoot more threes. He's talked about wanting to put the ball more in Austin's hands. He's talked about Max Christie being a corner crasher and the Lakers trying to emphasize more offensive rebounding. So I asked all those guys about those specific adjustments. And I'll say that the answers weren't great for the most part. Everyone kind of just acknowledged it and said that they could do those things, but didn't really go into more detail as to what that looks like or just kind of like other like advantages or adjustments within some of that stuff. So I would say that there wasn't much to go. Like a lot of it was like vibes, and vibes are important, but we didn't really get much into like X's and O's and tactical stuff with a lot of the guys, which is what I was trying to do. But I would say that the one thing that we heard unanimously, but from multiple players, including LeBron, AD, Austin, Rui, Max, is JJ wants them shooting more threes. And so I do think one of the key tenets of JJ Redick's strategy is going to be shooting more threes, and that's encouraging for a Lakers group that has been in the bottom 10 in terms of 3-point attempts in 4 of the 5 seasons of the LeBron AD era. So I think that is an encouraging sign that the Lakers should be taking more threes. Of course, it has to be within reason, and you don't want to like the Lakers live in the paint, and that helps them both be among the league leaders in terms of paint points, but also get to the free throw line a lot. So you don't want to lose that advantage. But if there are ways to generate more threes and more open threes, I think that's a sound strategy, and it's something I've been harping on for years. I've been harping on it since the Vogel days, through the Darvin Ham days, and then now into the JJ days. So it sounds like that's like the one thing we were able to kind of take away is that the Lakers are almost certainly going to be shooting more threes this season. But in terms of actual strategy, a lot of guys were downplaying stuff, saying like we got to get into camp, we got to get into the preseason first. So I think we'll start to see some or hear rather some of that stuff over the next few days. But that was like one thing for me, I guess, from like a selfishly like a disappointing thing was I just wanted to learn more about JJ's strategy and some of the changes with players, and it felt like a lot of it was just guys talking about sort of the offseason, what they worked on, and not as much about that stuff. And obviously, technically, JJ has not started coaching them because he's not allowed to with the offseason workout policy, but players have been in there for voluntary workouts. JJ has watched those workouts. So, it's kind of semantics in terms of like coaching there, but I digress. Like it is what it is. I just kind of wanted to get a little bit more of that, but I'm gonna hang out for about 10, 15 more minutes and answer some of your questions. Uh, Tony Yayo has Booten. I called myself the wrong name. Has Buha gotten an advanced screening of the LeBron Netflix starting five show? I did. I actually haven't watched it yet because I was on my honeymoon. Then I got back, and last week I did 3 episodes, and then I've just been prepping for media day and this week. And I still haven't even done my taxes. I got to do my taxes. That's a whole other thing. But the reporter life is kind of constantly busy, and like I have doctor's appointments and stuff I keep putting off and pushing uh, until some point because I just haven't had time. So I am going to watch it probably when everyone else is watching it, but I haven't really had the time. Uh, Glenn Kamita, which one of the current backup centers has a game that complements 80 the best? I think it's actually Christian Wood. And that's why, so I've been saying this for a while, but in terms of two bigs together, I like Christian Wood with 80. In terms of a lone big with 80 off the floor, I like Jackson Hayes better. So that's kind of the way I would use them is I would like to see Christian in some second unit lineups next to AD. because AD can kind of protect him defensively and sort of like supercharge him. Because a lot of times, going back to last season, AD would be maybe switch on to a guy and sort of funnel them in, and then Christian would be the weak side guy and come block a shot, or be vice versa of Christian funneling someone just with that frame. And then offensively, he can space the floor, which I think is really important, especially if you don't want to force AD to have to space the floor, which has at times been a bit of a dilemma when he plays next to a paint-bound center like a Jackson Hayes. So because Jackson can't shoot, Jackson is really skilled offensively, and I think his ability out of the short roll, like that was something he kind of talked about that he's been working on, is his floaters and his passing and his mid-range game out of the short roll and pick and roll. But for me, I still think Christian is a better fit next to AD, just because he's so skilled offensively in terms of his shooting and just his offensive repertoire. And I think defensively, he's a little bit better next to AD than Jackson is. But Christian's going to be out to start the season. I think Jackson's obviously going to be the backup center, and they're going to have to lean on him. And maybe we will see some Jackson AD lineups a bit more, at least to start the season. But between the two, I lean Christian. Uh, Chaco Thunder, Hayes gives you vertical spacing. He does give you vertical spacing. The problem, and this is where AD's jumper, I think, was so big during the 2020 season, is like it was a little bit easier when AD was making his mid-range jumpers and his three-pointers, at least at like a reasonable rate, where you could play another center next to him and get away with it. But I think AD has become much more of a around the basket, low post guy in terms of his shot profile, and just where he's been most efficient. That I think that's where that's where AD's jumper is so important. Just because even if he's still not taking that many jumpers, it's just more the threat of it can space the floor a bit. But if you have two guys who you kind of know that kind of have to be around the rim to be effective offensively, that's where you can run into some problems. And now I will say, like Jackson compared to a Dwight Howard on his third stint with the Lakers, or DeAndre Jordan, a Davian Jones, like those guys, Jackson Hayes is better than and is more of a threat than. But I still think that, like, he does give you vertical spacing. It's just with AD, I think they could still clash a bit. Uh, Sky Falcon 5, how was Muscle Watch? There was actually surprisingly like not much Muscle Watch. Some of the guys had their weights changed on like the training camp informational sheet, but it was not, it was not there was not a lot of like, I put on this much weight, I lost this much weight. I don't even think we had like any of those questions off the top of my head. I would say Dalton looked bigger. I will say that. Dalton Connect looked like he put on a good 5 to 10 pounds since summer league. It felt like he kind of filled out his frame a little bit more. So that was like and he didn't even talk about that. That was just like eye test. Other than Dalton, maybe AD is a little bit slimmer, but I feel like he's pretty similar. LeBron might be a little slimmer, but no one really talked about the muscle or weight fluctuation. So that unfortunately was not a thing in media day. Yeah, and I know I've butchered your name before. Schmidt Key Originals. Max Christie looks ripped. Max looks like he's in good shape. Um, and yeah, Mo Love, Brown at the high post, and Hayes at the dunker spot. Yeah. Uh, uh, Chaco Thunder. Do you think AR will be an All Star this year? No, if I'm being honest, like I think just the competition in the West is like, if you're an All Star guard, you're competing with Luca, Steph, Shea, Jaws back now. DeJounte Murray got added to the West. Jamal Murray is still never made an All-Star team. I know he's coming off a rough playoffs and a rough Olympics, but like Jamal Murray, I would not be surprised if he's capable of averaging 20 to 25 and having a really good season. De'Aaron Fox, um, James Harden, especially if Kawhi Leonard misses time, James Harden could be putting up some big numbers as a guard. Uh, is there anyone else? I mean, Ant. So like I mean, like the backcourt in the West is just absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe I just named Ant like seventh, which he is arguably going to be a starter next year. So uh, it's just and Luca can technically play front court, but I think he's often been voted in or selected as a guard. So I mean the West, uh, like could Austin put up an All Star level season? Yes, especially because D'Lo actually, if you look at the 2.5 months that D'Lo had from like mid January through like mid March, end of March, he was right there statistically with guys like Darius Garland and Jamal Murray. So if D'Lo maybe takes a slight step back, is more like option 3.5 and Austin's option 3, and Austin's putting up those types of numbers. I think Austin could be putting up an all-star caliber season, but jumping like only 5 or 6 of those 7 players that I just named are going to make the all-star team, and Austin jumping any of those, I find highly unlikely. But I mean, if the fan vote maybe counted as more, I could see somehow him getting voted in. But uh, yeah, Mitchell, Winch, Jovan, if you were the coach, how deep would you go into the rotation opening night? I think I would go 9 deep, and I would go the 5 starters along with Gabe, Max, Dalton, and Jackson. I think that like I think it's a little trickier if Vando and Christian are available, but assuming both of those guys are out, I think that's the clear 9. I don't think JHS, Maxwell, or Bronny are ready for rotation minutes yet. And I don't think Cam Reddish makes a lot of sense with Max. I think just being a better player and deserving a minute. So like if one of those guys gets in foul trouble or injured, obviously, then you could go to a Cam Reddish or maybe one of the other guys, depending on the position. But I think those are the 9 guys I would play, and I would obviously play. I think all 5 starters should be playing at least 28, maybe even 30 minutes, and then you know, the, Gabe probably like I'll probably do a rotation episode soon, but Gabe somewhere like 18 to 22 minutes, Max maybe 20 to 24 because they're going to need his wing defense, and then Jackson like 14 to 16, and then however many minutes left, give the rest to Dalton. So that would be my tentative rotation entering opening night. Uh, see from BC, can they trade D'Lo for a rebounder or someone more useful in the summer? Well, D'Lo is going to be. This is the tricky part with D'Lo moving forward is that he's going to be an unrestricted free agent this summer. So if the Lakers don't trade him by the trade deadline, he has more say in his future in terms of just he could go sign with another team and walk for nothing. So there is some potential incentive for the Lakers if they think that D'Lo is going. I mean, they could sign and trade him technically, so there still are ways to recoup value. They could obviously just resign him, but if the Lakers think D'Lo is leaving, there is some incentive to potentially trade him at the trade deadline. Uh, so that's certainly possible. Now, the one thing I will say, and this is the tricky thing with just the makeup of the roster, is if you trade D'Lo for, let's say, like Lakers and Magic trade, and maybe it's a 3-team trade to make salaries work and stuff, but like just the core of the trade is like D'Lo for Wendell Carter. You are losing. I mean, last year, D'Lo was the Lakers' second best playmaker and passer by a solid margin. Like I thought Austin, his assist numbers and assist percentage went up later in the season, and I thought he got more comfortable in the 5-out offense and looked much better as a playmaker and ball handler. And the Lakers obviously want him to take on more of that role. But losing D'Lo and replacing him with a big, there's a chance it works, and the benefits you get in terms of rim protection, defense, rebounding, kind of AD insurance, like that outweighs the loss of the ball handling and the playmaking and the shot making. But you are betting big now on like Austin probably has to take a solid leap. Now Gabe is potentially a starter or at least like a more critical piece. Maybe you elevate Matt, like you could go Max and Austin or Austin and Gabe. I mean, maybe you get a guard back in a separate trade. Like there's different ways it can play out. But if you're just straight up trading D'Lo for a big, there is some downside in terms of just like the offense takes a step back, I think, where you don't have the same level of playmaking and shooting. And now, maybe in the playoffs, it's less of a concern because of D'Lo's playoff struggles. But I still think, ideally, if you're trading D'Lo, you want to at least get like a backup caliber guard, and maybe again reorganize your starting lineup and uh, you promote Gabe or Max, and then you put that guard as a backup. But I think just losing D'Lo and not getting a guard back potentially creates some other problems within the offense, within the shooting, and within the playmaking. So it's a fine balance there. Of I almost would prefer to trade a Rui or a Vando for a big, because then it's more of like ideally you get like a big and a wing, and it's just kind of a like for like, and then you're just adding a big, and that's more like replacing Christian or Jackson. But it's a little bit of an easier sell to me of like, if you take Rui out and you put Wendell Carter, now all of a sudden you're just sliding LeBron to the three, Wendell at the four, AD at the five, or you're bringing Wendell off the bench. Maybe you promote Vando to the three, or whatever. But that's a little bit of an easier like kind of adjustment versus pulling D'Lo from the rotation and not bringing another guard in. I think you're in some dangerous waters there offensively. Uh, Yeah, and to be clear, I'm seeing some like, I'm not saying they can't trade D'Lo. Um, yeah, I'm gonna do a few more minutes here. Dark Galaxy, if Levine is playing well, would you trade for him and use the two picks for other players? This is a really good question. I think the fear for me with trading for Levine is you still have like you have to give up two rotation guys. Like I think to make the math work, it's something like um let me see how much he's making. I always it's I know it's like it's in the 40s. Uh Give me 1 second. Zach Levine contract. Zach is making this year, Zach Levine is making $43 million. So remember, the Lakers cannot take in more salary than they send out. So just with D'Lo and Rui, you don't get to Zach Levine's contract. So uh, you probably gotta do three guys, and I guess there's ways to you could offload additional salary if you kind of expand it to like a three team deal, but it gets a little tricky to just get to the Zach number, and you are shedding multiple salaries. So like now all of a sudden you have some roster flexibility. But I think I, I don't. To me, I, I guess I'm of the mindset that you can't really have Zach and Austin in the same backcourt, just because of the defense. And like Zach is better than D'Lo, but there are some similarities in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Where a guy who's a high volume shot creator and not much of a defender. Zach's obviously bigger and more athletic, and his defense has gotten a little better over the last few years, but he's still been a glaring minus. And I just think, and then I think D'Lo is a much better playmaker, if we're being honest, and like passer and stuff. So I think you're bringing in that like scorer, and I think Zach's floor is probably a little bit higher, where he's not going to give you some of the poor performances that D'Lo's had in like the Denver series. But Zach, to me, I have some major concerns about a Zach Austin backcourt, in terms of like just teams being able to pick on them defensively. So I think if you are moving on from D'Lo, you probably want to go in a little bit more of a defensive direction with the backcourt in terms of promoting Max, or promoting Gabe, and at least having or bringing in another like defensive minded guard or perimeter guy. So you could technically still do that with like additional moves. And if they did that and say got like a Marcus Smart, and they sent Memphis a first round pick, protected first round pick, whatever, depending on how Marcus is playing, like I like that a little bit more. But to me, it's almost like a Reeves versus Levine thing, and then that opens up a whole conversation of like, okay, if you're bringing in Levine, are you trading Reeves, and then what are you trying to trade Reeves for? And like Lakers really value him. He's on a really team friendly contract, so I'm I'm not as high on the Levine fit. Like I see why some people are into it, but I think logistically, once you get into like you're gonna have to send out like at least three contracts, and then you're gonna have these holes on the roster that you're gonna have to like if you trade Rui and D'Lo for Levine, even if Levine hits and is like the player he's been in the past, you're trading your starting wing and your starting point guard, and you're getting back technically like a shooting guard to 2.5. So I think that creates two notable holes in the rotation. And again, you could find different ways to plug that with picks, but then you also have to send out salary. You're not just taking back like maybe it's a bigger three-team trade where you're sending out like four or five guys and you're getting back Levine and someone else, or Levine and two other guys. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but it gets tricky to make the finances work. And that is one thing I will say for on the Lakers' behalf. Like the finances with the new CBA, it does get tricky trading wise. Now, I think you could go back and like they could have made some moves in the offseason and it would have been a little bit easier, especially like beginning of free agency where certain teams had cap space that you could trade into cap space. And there was things they could have done that they just chose not to do. So I'm not going to absolve them of any criticism. But in terms of like making something like that work, a high salary guy, it gets a little tricky. I mean, yeah, I'm seeing like Chalk Up Thunder, best is Bull Stretch and Wave Levine. Yeah, I mean that if you can if you gotta attach like a second round pick or something to Cam Reddish to dump Cam Reddish, and then you sign Zach Levine to like a minimum deal, that's a no brainer, and then you just figure it out in terms of like Zach, D'Lo, Austin, or then you can trade D'Lo, but then maybe you're getting back a wing or a big or whatever. Like it gets a little bit easier to make it work, but well, I mean, we'll see. And I'm gonna answer a couple more, and then I'm gonna get out of here. Appreciate you guys all for tuning in, and as always, make sure to like this stream and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. Robert Williams, Rob said 30 games to find out what's here. Sounds reasonable. Yeah, that takes the team to, I mean, so realistically, now that the Lakers have not made a trade entering camp, unless they make a trade here in the next few hours, like they're not going to make a trade until at least mid-January because that's just how the NBA trade season works. Because you got the wave of free agents that can't be traded till December 15th, and the next wave of free agents that can't be traded till January 15th. So the Lakers realistically are not likely to trade until at least mid-January at the earliest. So I mean that puts you way past 30 games, but I think the first 30 games are going to be important to really determine like is this group worth investing in, and I personally think they are, and I think there's a chance that the Lakers are setting them up to for failure in terms of not investing in them this offseason and sort of just letting it ride based on like how the season goes. Whereas I think had they invested in them a little bit heavier this offseason, they'd probably be in a better position to withstand a Vando injury or a Christian Wood injury. Like the Lakers had a better backup center than Jackson Hayes. Christian Wood being out doesn't matter as much. If the Lakers had another 3-and-D caliber wing, Jared Vanderbilt being out doesn't matter as much. But because those guys play such important positions on this team, and they don't really have guys that can mimic their like the Lakers don't have another stretch five like Christian Wood. They don't have another 6'8", 6'9", rangy wing defender, the caliber of Jared Vanderbilt. So like those two guys play critical roles on this team, in theory. So them not having that, like that's where those injuries really cost them. So I I get like the 30 games to me is like it's kind of like an obvious thing where I'm like, yeah, they're going to go like 40 games probably before even making a move if they do make a move. But really, that 30 game mark or so is going to dictate is this group worth investing in, and are they going to start making the calls and start trying to be aggressive in terms of using a pick or two, or is this team like 14 and 16, and at that point they're like we're not going to invest in this team being a 7 seed again and then probably losing in the first round. To Choco Thunder's point, that Nixon Wolves trade is not official because they need to make the money match. Robinson is out, so like that's uh, Robinson. He's going to be out for for another 3 months or so. So that's problematic if you're the Lakers. But this is an example of like there was an agreed upon trade, but it actually isn't finalized because they're still figuring out the minutia of the salary stuff under the new CBA. Excuse me. Mo Love, you dunking yet? No. I played basketball once, and jumping is still very weird for me. It's more like the jumping and landing, and especially when you're in the paint, uh, and there's a bunch of feet around, you're like you're nervous. So I'm still a ways away, I think, from playing like full basketball again. But question from Ray: how was your honeymoon? Honeymoon was great. We went to Maui and we stayed right there in a hotel on the beach, and we're just doing beach and pool and drinking, watching football. And then we did Honolulu, specifically Waikiki, and we're just uh, also chilling, pool and beach, and then doing some shopping, doing some fine dining at restaurants and stuff. So it was 10 days in Hawaii and was a great time with my lovely and beautiful wife and married man, and it's feels good. And now I'm ready for this. I mean, season's technically started, but I'm ready for things to really start tomorrow. Uh, okay, couple more and then I'm out. And I keep saying that, but I love you guys, so I'm gonna keep going for a little bit. Dark Galaxy. This is a little bit off topic, but what is your favorite away arena when the Lakers play? So close your ears. But my favorite, I would say two, and they're kind of cliche, but for sure MSG. There's just something about that arena and the buzz in the arena, and I like the whole thing they do with Celebrity Row, where they'll show clips. They'll show like every celebrity in attendance, which the Lakers only do like the big celebrities. If it's like a Bad Bunny or a Justin Bieber or a Ben Affleck or a J, like they'll do the bigger kind of A list or whatever people sitting courtside. Knicks will do just about everybody, but I like that they'll like include if it's a musician, they'll include like a song of theirs, or if it's an actor, they'll include like a movie or a TV show, and like it also kind of reminds you who the person is in case you don't know. So I think that like the vibe in MSG is really good. But the other one that this is where you need to close your ears is TD Garden is actually electric, and it's I think part of it is because it's Lakers Celtics, so there's always a little extra juice. But if you actually ask a lot of the players, and I did the anonymous player survey where I asked players a bunch of questions, and like a lot of players will say TD Garden is their favorite arena, just in terms of like atmosphere, because there's always just something extra there. So in terms of like niceness or like just how nice an arena is, I would say Chase Center, Golden State is up there. The Golden One Center, Sacramento is up there. State Farm Arena, the Atlanta one, is up there. Uh, those are the ones that come off the like off the top of my head. But yeah, I would say Boston and New York. I mean, two great sports towns, and again, any Lakers Celtics. There's been some crazy Lakers Celtics games in Boston the last few years, so that's probably part of it too. Sorry, Ray. I see your. I haven't been to Intuit Dome, so we'll see what that's like. Dark Galaxy. Also, you should do a room setup video. That's a good idea. I've thought about doing something like that. So maybe part of my vlogging, I can bring you guys behind the scenes of the home office. Lakers in seven. Yo Jovan just joined. Have you talked about Max Christie yet? And thoughts on Braun and Bronny at media day? I didn't talk much about Bronny. I thought Bronny handled himself very well. He obviously got asked a bunch of questions about his dad, and he continues to like he's clearly been trained, and I mean that in a good way. But he handles every question with grace and with ease. So I thought he had a really good perspective on playing in the G League and not acting like that's beneath him or not something he's prepared for. Braun, that was my first takeaway. I did 5 takeaways earlier. Like his just energy and his mood were great. this was as happy and joyous as I can remember him. And I think part of that was Olympic gold, and then also playing with Bronny, and then Max Christie. I mean, you guys know I'm high on Max, so I was asked a question about Max versus Gabe. I said I think Max will ultimately play a bigger role and play more. So I think Max is in for a big season. He's my breakout guy on this team. I see a lot of Boston in the chat, and yeah, it's Boston Reeves. Um, Luis, Jovan Buha, back to work, my friend. Puerto Rico in the house. Puerto Rico is definitely in the house. What's up, my Boricua brother? Nice to hear you. Um, Lakers in seven. Sorry. Lakers in seven. You think Braun and Bronny might start preseason or probably not? Well, I don't think they're going to start together in preseason. Will they play together? Maybe. The one thing is like it doesn't really count in the preseason compared to the regular season. So I think when we're thinking about this moment that they're going to share the floor together, I think we're all thinking regular season, not preseason. Maybe they end up playing together in the preseason. I wouldn't be surprised if they try and at least, but like to me, it kind of spoils the actual moment of them being on the floor together in the regular season. So uh, I lean probably slightly more toward them not sharing the floor in the regular season. Like maybe they just want to do it just to kind of test it out a little bit and see what it's like. But I feel like it will have more impact if they do it for the first time in the regular season, just because that's really what, like, we rarely show preseason highlights unless it's like rookie Kobe dunking on Ben Wallace. That's a throwback for those who know. But like other than that, you rarely see preseason highlights or like Rick Fox and Doug Christie fighting. But like like there's a reason why it's the preseason. So I would say I would lean toward regular season, but maybe they just want to kind of test it out, and maybe they want to play together multiple. I'm sure they will play together multiple times. But I mean, like multiple times, like kind of leading into it. Robert. Robert Williams. Yo, I'm kid on the way. Well, I already do have a son. I have a son, and I talked about that a little bit in the marriage. We had matching J's, and we had a matching tuxedo. So I already have the kid part partly checked, but we will have kids at some point in the future. I still think it's a few years away. I'm trying to build up this channel and this podcast, and she's doing her thing with nursing. So I think we also have to move into a bigger place, frankly. So yeah, I think there's lot of things to do before then. Lakers and seven. Last question. You think we run the actual starters in preseason, or we include some bench and starters? I think the real starters will start, and then they won't go like a real rotation, but it'll be like a condensed rotation, maybe to like 2 to 3 quarters of like what it actually would look like. So I guess like somewhere in between for your question. Dark Galaxy, what would JV and Malcolm cost? I assume you're talking Jonas Valanciunas here, uh, and Malcolm Brogdon. And I think a first for each one gets them. I don't really love that. I like. I mean, maybe a protected first, but like I don't. I have my concerns about both guys as potential fits. I've not been a big JV guy, just because of the defense, and so yeah. I mean, it really depends. I think like closer to the trade deadline, the prices probably drop for both guys. Maybe you get like a couple seconds, but I think those guys have value. I'm not. I want some more youth and athleticism. Uh, Bobby, so I'm having an issue right now where I think it's coming out of my AirPods and it's not coming through the mic. So I've been having issues with StreamYard. That's why this sounds not normal. But I probably could acoustically treat my room a little better, but I think unless you're also talking about my normal episodes, I think right now this is my mic isn't working. So I'm just keeping this up for decoration. For iFu, hey Jovan, thinking about proposing in PR. Any good restaurant recommendations? I actually have not been to PR in a long time. I am ashamed to say that. Uh, but I can get back to you on that. If you next stream, which might be tomorrow, I'll have an answer, or will be tomorrow. I'll have an answer for you. Um, okay, well, I think I'm gonna wrap here because I still have to write and do more stuff in preparation for tomorrow. But thank you guys for watching the stream. I think aside from my mic not working, this test went fairly well, and I enjoyed giving you guys takeaways, but also interacting with you all. I'm seeing quickly. I like Marcus Smart. I also like Colin Sexton. So I would. The Norma saying, go to the Vanderbilt Hotel in Condado. So there might be your answer. But thank you guys for watching. As always, make sure to like and comment under this stream. And if you have not subscribed yet, please consider doing so. It would mean a lot and will mean you won't miss any more of my future videos or streams. I'll be back tomorrow after day 1 of training camp to give you guys the latest intel in terms of what was said, who spoke, and what we learned. So be on the lookout for that. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Peace.